This week on All About Android, we prepare for ads on our lock screens. We've also got pricing for the Nothing Phone 1, more EU regulation of tech companies, and so much more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This episode of All About Android is brought to you by Bitwarden. Get the password manager that offers a robust and cost-effective solution that can drastically increase your chances of staying safe online. Get started with a free trial of a Teams or Enterprise plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. And by Wealthfront. To start building your wealth and get your first $5,000 managed for free for life, go to wealthfront.com/twit. And by Collide. Collide is an endpoint security solution that gives IT teams a single dashboard for all devices, regardless of their operating system. Visit collide.com/AAA to learn more and activate a free 14-day trial today. No credit card required. Welcome to All About Android, episode 585, recorded on Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. We're your weekly source for the latest news, hardware, and apps for the Android faithful. I'm Ron Richards.
And I'm Huyen.
And we are Jason-less this week. He is off gallivanting on an adventure. Huyen, this is your first episode without Jason, so you haven't really lived the chaos of All About Android yet. So I'm excited. I'm excited for you to experience that.
Yeah, me too. When the Jason's away, the Android faithful will play. Is that weird?
We'll do that.
Okay, we'll just stick with that. A little bit weird, a little bit. It's okay. See, already get off to a crazy start.
But it's okay because our guest is totally cool with it. He's down with it. It's Mr. Juan Bagnell.
I just feel like this is contributing to the complex I have, where I think I've done more Jason-less episodes than anyone else in the show.
I think you're right, because what happens is that Jason goes, "Hey guys, I'm going to be on vacation. Who do you want to fill in?" Great. Yeah, he's gone. Jason always asks, "Who do we want as a guest when he's gone?" And I'm always like, "Juan," because I really want someone who knows the show and is used to the chaos, because it's going to be a bumpy road.
It's great.
So
yeah. I love it. No, see, but these are fun. Again, it's always nice, like when you're doing live TV. It's like I've just got to fly by the seat of my pants, and you get dynamite. You get gold out of that, baby. It's gold.
So Juan, how you been living, sir? Some gadget guy. How's everything going on your side of the world?
Yeah, I've been hanging in there. You know, it's been really crazy that this is normally the time of the year. Like in years past, we'd be getting into the summer and things would be kind of slowing down. And right now, I just feel like there's been this kind of explosion in companies trying to drum up interest in other accessories and other products. So while, we don't have some of the major phone releases that are going to be happening over the next couple months, like I'm booked solid, and that's a good feeling, because usually summers are a little lean, and right now I'm definitely on my toes. So it's been real good times.
Well, that's good to hear. We felt that leanness as Huyen and I started doing the plan for the show today. Here we are. It's the day after the 4th of July holiday here in the States. I'll let your own commentary, everyone's individual commentary on Independence Day sit as you want to. But here we are. It's Tuesday. We're back at it, and coming out of a holiday weekend. There wasn't a lot to start with, but I'm actually really excited because I think we found some really interesting stuff to talk about, and stuff that, Juan, I really want to get you to weigh in on. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
And that said, let's dive right into the news, Mr. Burke.
We're going to rewind that.
You see, what's funny is that I believe Burke tried to be prepared for the Android news bumper tonight, and it seems to have blown up in his face. So let's rewind and try that again.
Yeah, take your own advice,
buddy. Plan
buddy.
too hard.
Yeah, exactly. Let's do it.
Let's dive right into the news, Burke.
Why, thank you, Ron. Let's dive into the news. And I'm going to throw my phone out the window if this next article actually happens.
I mean, you might not be alone. So this came from a tip from our very own Florence Ion. So guess what? You might be getting ads on your lock screen if rumors are true. According to TechCrunch, Glance, a mobile ad company and subsidiary of InMobi, is in talks with U.S. wireless carriers and plans to launch next month. And so what Glance is well, several things. It's been referred to as India's first unicorn startup because of its fundraising, and even Google, unsurprising because Google loves them ads and loves that ads revenue, is also an investor in this company, Glance. And really what it is dynamic lock screen content that is very adful. It is not just like necessarily, static ads. It's also content. It's videos. And like, it's really interesting because it's a dynamic lock screen, and, the only way you really can get past it is for you to unlock your phone. But Glance is really trying to keep you kind of enticed to kind of just keep that phone locked. And what's really interesting is that the content that you see and the kinds of ads that you can see on Glance are tend to vary based on region. For example, in India, there's just all kinds of like video content you can see. There was even some events that kind of promise to have users interact directly in real time with their favorite stars on television home screens, and content is scrollable. So they're really, it's almost like, Manuel, sorry if I'm going to pronounce her name wrong, Manuel Bagnell over at Android Police referred to it as Google Discover on steroids or something like this. And it's very much this kind of feel where they're trying to serve you content, and also they're reacting to what you interact with and what you kind of dismiss, and trying to customize your content experience. And so, for example, in India, you might get a full-blown kind of, again, this kind of like connecting you with stars kind of content, whereas in contrast, where Manuel is in the EU, in Germany, it's a lot more stripped down, more just kind of like really nice wallpapers, and some of them might be more kind of sponsored wallpapers. And so since the US is kind of in between these two extremes in terms of consumer protection laws, we will have to see what the US Glance content is like. Will it be this kind of like full media experience, Google Discover, with fireworks, and I guess since we just passed July 4th, fireworks and tons of pizzazz, or is it going to be more kind of understated and a little bit more solemn? I don't know. But we will see. And again, it's an interesting note is that, in other countries like Asia, where Glance is, a lot of the partnerships that Glance have are with smartphone producers, whereas here in the US, they have to go after the carriers, because who really controls things in this country, the mobile carrier. So we'll see how it goes. You definitely should check out Flo's article. At the end, she kind of muses, kind of like Burke is, on what this future could be, because, we're getting into a year of, maybe seeing more ads in your notifications, and now maybe you'll see them on your lock screen. So thoughts, and impressions?
I knew... everyone should go read Flo's article on Gizmodo.com, by the way, because she did a great job covering it. And I knew she and Will's everybody else was going to go in this direction. And I want to make a couple points, and then Juan, I want to hear what you think about this. But one, Amazon did this years ago with the lock screen on the Fire tablets and the Fire phones, and like we made some noise at it, and then I haven't heard a single person complain about it since then, right? And then secondarily, this is pretty standard fare in Asia and India. So that lock screen real estate is being monetized and is being used for push. It's kind of reminds me of, I'm dating myself here, but in the 90s, there was a startup called Pointcast that was basically like a screensaver that fed you news headlines and things like that. And it was like pre-RSS, pre all the stuff that we use now, but like ahead of its time. And this reminds me a lot of that. I'm going to reserve my judgment though on what I think of it though, because Juan, what is your first reaction to this?
I mean, the first reaction to this is bad. I don't want it. I purposely go out of my way to buy products that don't sort of monetize in this kind of way. And when I feel like when we've examined some of these other solutions for serving up advertising, I feel the only way it's sort of fair to the consumer is if they get a cut. So if you're getting an insanely cheap Fire tablet, and part of that is you're going to be subsidizing the cost of that with advertising, then I think that's a fair trade. Someone can make that purchasing decision. Or if you're in one, because like there are a number of those apps, like you can watch ads or you can shop and spend in different ways, and then you get like cashback incentives or gift cards or something like that. I mean, so many people are taking surveys on Google through Google Rewards to subsidize their app purchases. So if this is just a way to monetize, I'm increasingly anxious for the United States because we actually don't have good regulatory agency over the telecoms. The FTC put out a report several months ago talking about how like everything we do is basically being monitored, tracked, sold, and profited off of. And this sounds like exactly something that carriers would do, premium tier phones, and something tells me this will lopsidedly affect Android users. Apple will have enough clout to say, no, 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 leave our notification space alone. You're not going to be able to do this on iPhones. And it's going to increasingly make Android devices less desirable if this shows up on like a Galaxy S series.
But I'll counterpoint that Apple will say, no, 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 leave our notification screen or our lock screen alone until we decide it's worthwhile to roll this out. You know, and we're going to see how it works out on Android, and then we'll do the Apple version of it. Yeah.
Totally agree. But the Apple version is going to be one where, for whatever reason, Apple customers are fine patting themselves on the back for being a part of the ecosystem. We're not going to get a contained Google ecosystem advertising machine that serves us those Google products and services. Like with Apple, it's going to be, hey, check out this amazing thing that you can watch on Apple TV, and check out Apple Music, and check out, you know, the next AirPods. And Apple fans are just going to be reinforced why they should stay in the Apple ecosystem. We're going to get ads for everything, you know, whatever reason, Android seems to be a catch-all for that kind of behavior. So if you're getting a benefit out of it, like if you're telling me I can choose to buy a new Galaxy, and instead of paying $1,000, I can get it at a ridiculous, you know, an even better savings than doing like a trade-in, then I can make that choice as a consumer to have something on my lock screen. But increasingly, I'm also just trying to talk people out of like staring at their lock screens for things. If you're going to pick up or notice your phone, it should be with some kind of purpose, because we're all just sort of hyper distracted anyway. So the advertising thing might be just a non-issue, especially for folks like me who are already wearing some kind of other notification delivery system.
Well, so the other additional thoughts I'll base off that is, what's interesting and what I read about Glance and what they do, I mean, yes, everyone's going to, you know, like even the headline for Flo's article was like your Android lock screen could be filled with ads, right? So you're immediately thinking of like Times Square or like a NASCAR race or like the worst case scenario of it, right? But if Glance is doing this in a way that is, and I'll give credit where credit's due, Instagram ads are very effective.
Yes.
I was going to say like Snapchat. Exactly. Yeah. If it just becomes another social media style delivery system, then again, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of harm there. But I think the people that do care about this care about it enough that it will absolutely impact their purchasing decisions. And then someone who's game to have that kind of customized content delivery system might not notice. I just feel when money is getting exchanged and when these manufacturers are obviously earning revenue off of this kind of user behavior, I think the user should get a cut. In some way,
100%
I think
agreed.
the user
100% agreed. Yeah.
should be included in that conversation.
Yeah, there should be some sort of return or some sort of knock. Yeah, like I don't know how that works, whether it's on the carrier level or you get it from Google or whatnot. But I'm with you. The idea,
Samsung credits. You know, you watch enough ads and eventually you get yourself some Galaxy Buds. I know a lot of people that would be totally down to have that behavior monetized.
Now, I'm right there. Right, Huyen, after you.
Oh no, quite. But question. I actually brought this up during dinner. I liked it when I do my show prep, especially when it's my family. I like to kind of like, well, what do y'all think of this? Because we're all Android users in this house. And I think my brother-in-law made a good point and was wondering, oh, well, maybe the carriers that they're talking to might be kind of one of those like budget, you know, I mean, usually we talk about and think about and complain about, you know, Verizon, T-Mobile, the big ones. Google Fi, but what would if Glance is talking to kind of more super budget, like, you know, the kind of $5 for unlimited data type, you know, data plans with kind of like lower end phones, does that change your opinion on it? Do you think that's acceptable that maybe in exchange for these super hyper cheap services and for the folks using this, maybe Glance is not a bad, you know, trade-off, or could maybe just be part of
subsidized?
You know, I don't know, subsidizing it. Yeah. But I mean, does that change your opinion at all?
I like it if it is actually a subsidy over what their rates would have been. My fear is that when people go in to shop on low-cost options, they're often the people that are most taken advantage of. So here now you're going to be monetized, your behavior is going to be monetized. We already know that these companies profit insanely off of our data anyway. And then this is just yet another sort of wealth extraction system based off of user behavior. If it's that they're going to monetize the cheap carrier people because subsidizing, but then they don't really get a benefit, then I think that's a very that's a bad look for a low-cost carrier.
Very fair. Yeah.
Agreed. The other point I was going to make is that I've been monitoring my own use of my phone lately, and specifically when traveling or on the train or watching my kids or whatever. I do find myself more often than not that I'm scrolling Instagram less or Twitter less or social networks less, and I unlock my phone and then I immediately swipe right to see the news feed, from kind of Google thing. If that's just pushed over to the lock screen, I don't even need to unlock my phone, right? What we're underscoring here is that we're all assuming the glance technology is going to be used for that Times Square ads kind of experience I mentioned, but the technology also can push content and can push news. And so if you have an integration with Google News or whatever it might be, it's to your point, Juan, how are you using your phone or looking at your phone and all that stuff, it could make the lock screen useful at that point and save a swipe. I can quickly look to see what the latest headlines are and decide if I want to open my phone or just put it back in my pocket.
I think the flip side of this is people who don't wear, smartwatches and other notification systems. Like I'm still dying for a good heads-up display after losing Focals by North. I think a lot of people will also push back from the opposite side where I use my lock screen to get it's this is like a pocket smartwatch. The lock screen is like a pocket watch, but a smart pocket watch. And so now if they go to their lock screen and other things are competing for their attention against the information that they're trying to access, I think you're going to find the opposite. The people who are very different from me are also going to push back against some of this idea because that reduces the functionality of their communication system. It's going to improve their interactions with news and links and social media. I've got a really well-cultivated Reddit account so that I get exactly the subreddits and the kinds of stories that I like to read. But I don't want my news, my subreddit feed competing with my text messages and instant messages and my calls and my voicemails. I think you're going to run into some conflict there too.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. I mean, it hasn't even happened yet. This is just like the article is like they're thinking about entering the U.S. They're currently in India and they're in some parts of the EU, but so we'll see if it comes. I don't know. Well, speaking of the EU, coming hot off the heels of their ruling related to phone charging cables, right? The USB-C to rule them all. Just today, in fact, the EU passed two more acts. The Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act. And but basically, these acts are both meant to basically rein in tech companies and give more power back to the consumer. So just a couple of quick, what does this mean? And we don't know. These two kind of laws or whatever, what acts or whatever they are in the EU aren't as definitive as the charging cable one, where it's just like phones need to use the same cable. Like it's not as definitive as that. They are open to interpretation. But basically, what they do is the Digital Markets Act is going to limit how big a tech company can actually get. For example, it could limit Google's preference, Google giving preference to their own services versus third-party ones. So think about shopping or some of the other, if you watch John Oliver a couple of weeks ago, they did a piece on tech and they did a whole example of how when you search on Google, they're doing everything they can to keep you on Google. They're not like if you search for a flight, they're giving you Google Flights, which gives you flights from other airlines, but in their wrapper, not in another third-party site wrapper. So this act will actually work against that. It also mandates how large companies need to work with smaller companies than themselves, which potentially could force a sea change in messaging apps. If for some reason it's interpreted by this act that Apple needs to open up iMessage to work with the little company called Facebook. But the language in this one is vague, so it's hard to tell how much of an impact it will have. But the big piece of this one is that it dictates how third-party platforms can communicate directly with users now. So imagine if you get an app through the Google Play Store, currently now in order for that third-party developer to talk to you, it's got to circle back through Google Play services. With this act, the third party can now contact you directly, right? So it's circumventing it's kind of breaking off the choke point of both Apple and Google as the arbiter of who gets to talk to their actual customers, which could have huge ramifications. And then the Digital Services Act basically is much more specific, and this is protections around content moderation and also the prevention of illegal sales of bad things on the internet and that sort of thing. So this takes effect in 2024, but the penalty from the EU that they would levy on a company if they're found in violation of any of these could be up to 10% of the company's worldwide revenue from the prior year. So when you take into account that both Apple and Google are $200 billion companies or things like that, or not 200 billion, but 257 billion is Google's revenue.
You were right.
Yeah, I was right. This could levy a fine as high as $25 billion, which is just crazy. So what do you think? Is the EU serving the best interests of the consumers, or they go a little overreach here? What does everybody think of these two acts?
I mean, just to jump in, I think we're seeing a good faith effort where these modern day tech conglomerates are increasingly difficult to regulate in a meaningful fashion. So we were talking about those penalties. How many times have we seen class action lawsuits and you're like, Apple profited to the tune of billions of dollars and they got a $50 million fine, where that's barely a tax on that business practice. And so obviously we need to change something. The thing that makes me a little anxious, and I'm sure, Ron, where we can sometimes differ on some of our political ideologies, I think you would also agree with me. It always makes me anxious when some of this stuff is vaguely defined.
Exactly.
Because when we talk about things like services interoperability, that's going to be a security nightmare if it's not handled appropriately. Yep. So I feel like there's some good faith effort in here to start reining in until we can see what the ramifications of some of this regulatory policy is really going to look like. I'm in a very sort of anxious but hopeful holding pattern. There's some of the steps that I think we need to take, but man, do we need to be specific about the particulars of how this stuff goes out.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. Sure. I think with a lot of these EU things that the intention is absolutely, I'd say, generally very good. And that the fact that it is the EU pushing it and kind of, trying to force them into it is a good thing. But kind of similarly, I think a lot of times the people that write these laws are not necessarily the most tech savvy people. And so the logistics, the specifics of it tend to get a little bit lost. And that's where trouble can happen for just everyday developers, smaller developers, not necessarily in Google and Apple, but the people that have to work with them. And yeah, as you said, Juan, the ambiguity can lead to some issues. So we'll see. The intentions are very good. I think the EU's track record with legislating tech has been good effort, but you didn't think things through. Can we bring somebody in who knows what they're talking about a little bit? A few more people in the room, just a few more people in the room. But that's kind of where I'm at. I'm yeah, good intention, but we'll have to see how this actually shakes out and what the day-to-day, result of this in terms of the engineering and the business side of it kind of shake out by 2024. So
yeah, I can't imagine a governmental ruling by uninformed people making the decision. I don't know what that's like.
Oh no, I mean, obviously all the ones that have in the U.S. are totally informed by the best people. So sorry.
Only the best people.
So I will say thanks to the chat room and Burke, I'm going to drop it in the doc if you want to do it. So thanks to Scooter X in the chat room for sharing the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, of which I have donated to many, many times over the years. Issued a press release today, basically about these acts, and they're basically saying, the subhead is the laws have important tools to make the internet a fairer place, but there are implementation challenges ahead. And so you can read through there on what their thoughts of it. And a specific quote from Christoph Schmann, their international policy director, says there's a lot to like in the Digital Services Act. Far too many proposals launched since work on the DSA began in 2020 pose real risk to free expression by making platforms the arbiters of what can be said online, and the DSA avoids many of them. That said, we can expect a highly politicized co-regulatory model of enforcement with an unclear role of government agencies, which could create real problems. And that's the real kind of worry there. Now,
see, Ron, doesn't it feel great when your gut instinct, man, I really am kind of tuned into this stuff when my off the cuff reaction to this article is also from Android Authority is also sort of falling in line with what the EFF is also concerned about.
Go right ahead and pat yourself on the back. You nailed it.
Right?
Good job. So we'll see. Hopefully, the implementation and enforcement is fair and works for everybody. But time will tell. We'll find out in 2024.
Well,
so.
and the concern, I think, is always, I'm almost positive the first steps on this will be clumsy, ineffective, and will probably, like Huyen was saying, will probably do harm to unintended audiences, and that we just need to see the reactions to those early policies are fluid enough to adapt to changing markets over the next couple of years. That's the only thing we can hope now that this stuff has actually been pushed through.
I mean,
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the big potential flaw in all of these is that it's written and executed by people. Period. And we're flawed.
They're the cause of all our problems, man.
Exactly.
Everything would be perfect if it weren't for all these people.
Inherently, they were inherently flawed. Huyen, what were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say, well, I mean, I'm sure we can trust the EU and other governmental agencies to be totally agile and be able to adapt to things quickly when things go awry. So, I mean, what do we really have to win for, right? We'll just trial and error.
Yeah, absolutely.
So much snark in this conversation. I kind of love it. I love it.
I kind of feel, I mean, like, it's like, good job, but we're still watching. We're still paying attention. You know what I mean? So,
well, and this is the important time for us to keep watching. I mean, again, it's like we keep acting like, I don't mean the three of us in this conversation right now. I just mean people in general see like a law or a bill or a regulatory act go in, and you're like, that's not the end of the conversation. That is the beginning of the observation. And I feel like, especially people younger than me, seem to have a little bit savvier grasp on how fluid that political conversation is. Now we just need to see whether or not we're gonna find progress, or if it's just gonna be more cynicism as this stuff is enacted.
Yep.
So this actually leads really great into our next story, which is kind of almost like the opposite end of what's going on. So we talked previously about South Korea's anti-Google law, where they basically mandated that Google had to allow for third-party billing options to be displayed in addition to Google Play billing. It's great. It's called the anti-Google law, but there's still some kind of catch-alls, like Google still gets to take a cut of developer profits, and it's not necessarily. It's more like you need to be able to tack on a third-party billing option, but it still has to be there with Google Play. So it's definitely was a step forward from another entity, South Korea, in an effort to kind of rein in Google and other big companies. Well. So, there's catch-alls and there's always loopholes and catch-alls. Well, the messaging app in South Korea, KakaoTalk, has had further updates blocked from Google, citing violations of Google Play billing policy. Now, KakaoTalk is the messaging app of South Korea. It has over 100 million downloads. I think, the population of South Korea is 51 million people. And I think I heard someone say that KakaoTalk has like 45 million users. This app is on 93% of phones in South Korea. It is the messaging app. And their updates are being blocked because in the app, the updates to the app have included a link. And here we go. Here's the sticking point. It has a link that link to KakaoTalk's website, so that it's that idea of like not circumventing Google and not going around Google's back to talk to KakaoTalk directly to make purchases or make payments rather than integrating with the Play Store platform. And this is causing their updates to be held hostage pretty much. And I mean, it's really interesting that even with this anti-Google law, this is happening. This is the messaging app of South Korea, and currently it cannot update because, heaven forbid, it linked out to its own website for payments. And so, this is, as you can see here, it's like the exact opposite of what's going on with the EU, where, whereas the EU, the Digital Markets Act allows for this to happen. Here we go. One of the biggest apps in South Korea suffering from that loophole. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting that, obviously the sentiment all over the world is kind of in the nature of anti-Google, the Digital Markets Act, but the reality is going to be a bit different. I mean, and I guess this is kind of maybe a point in the negative side of, okay, we have a law, but the implementation and the enforcement is, well, maybe the implementation more than the enforcement is kind of not sufficient.
Lacking. Yeah, it completely is, for sure.
So... Yep.
Yeah, it kind of breaks my heart a little that, because this is something that I feel like it's been fair to be highly critical of Apple's business policies over the last several years, how they treat developers and some of the horror stories that smaller developers might share. And you always had the sense like, well, on Android phones, I can sideload and I can install completely different app stores. Like, it felt a little freer and a little bit more open. And it's been frustrating to see some of these policies start gaining a bit more visibility where Google is locking down, like, how do they get their cut from developers? And when it's something like a messaging platform like this, I think it looks even worse for Google, where this isn't built on like a Google platform. You know, this is a chat service. They're managing their own servers, their own connections between users, and all Google is responsible for is putting a link to install the program on your phone. Like, they're only there for access, and I don't feel that deserves a 30% cut in perpetuity with no other options if a customer decides that they want to try and pay the developer directly. You know, so again, this is just like when we saw some of those issues with like Facebook donations and Apple taking money out of Facebook donations, and Facebook wasn't allowed to tell people that a cut was getting removed by Apple. It kind of breaks my heart to see Google really more strongly enforcing some of those policies to the detriment of the communications app, because that's also a security issue. If you're preventing updates and you're preventing people from like making sure their app and their conversations are secure over something like this payment process, that's an even worse look for a community of people that in South Korea, Google is such a vital part of that ecosystem. So it makes me sad. I really wish Google weren't doing this at a time where so many regulatory interests were looking at their business practices with a little more scrutiny.
Yep. And the thing is that this, this action answers the question of how is Google going to enforce this policy change, especially in the wake of Epic and stuff like that. And what's fascinating is that they, blocking the update. Like, that's, I find that fascinating. It's not like coming down on the developer or something, but like not letting the app update itself. Because I bet you there's also bug fixes and things like that are in that app update that need to get out there, right? So when you've been on the developer side, can you imagine getting your app update blocked? Like, I just that action I find to be crazy. But
I mean, yeah,
it introduces a security problem for Android devices, and Google is enforcing older software that might have bugs or other exploits, and they're preventing the developers from fixing it, which is causing a security problem for those phones. That to me is just like it's what do you say, biting off your nose to spite your face, kind of a thing.
Exactly.
Yep. Forest for the trees, some sort of metaphor like that. Yeah.
So, fill in appropriate metaphor here because Juan is under caffeinated today.
Fill in appropriate metaphor for banging your head in the wall because you're really not helping anybody.
Exactly.
So we'll see how this all plays out though. So
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, speaking of security and things like that, let's take a break and thank our first sponsor. This episode of All About Android is brought to you by Bitwarden. And Bitwarden is the only open source cross-platform password manager that can be used at home, work, or on the go, and is trusted by millions. With Bitwarden, you can securely store credentials across personal and business worlds. Every Bitwarden account begins with the creation of a personal vault. And what's even better is Bitwarden has big news. After launching the username generator last month, they're integrating with 3 popular email forwarding services that also happen to be open source: Simple Login, AnonAddy, and Firefox Relay. Now adding another layer of security and privacy is easier than ever. When using Bitwarden to generate a new username, the option to create an email alias is presented with a sub-selection for choosing your preferred service. Just enter the API key for your individual account with the chosen service, select the desired options, and once generated, a new alias is instantly registered to your account. Using unique usernames, email addresses, and passwords for every account is a powerful method for increasing internet security and privacy and adds protection to logins in the face of data breaches and leaks. This feature will be available on the Web Vault, desktop app, and browser extensions, with mobile planned for a future release coming soon. Bitwarden is a must-need for your business. It's fully customizable and adapts to your business needs. Use Bitwarden Send, a fully encrypted method to transmit sensitive information, whether text or files. Generate unique and secure passwords for every site with enterprise-grade security that's GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, and SOC2 compliant. Their end-to-end encrypted vault helps mitigate phishing attacks. And their Teams organization option is $3 a month per user. Share private data securely with coworkers across departments or the entire company. Enterprises can use Bitwarden's enterprise organization plan for just $5 a month per user. And individuals can use their basic free account forever with an unlimited number of passwords or upgrade anytime to their premium account for less than $1 a month. Their family organization option gives up to 6 users premium features for only $3.33 a month. And listen, at Twit, we are fans of password managers. Jason and I have been talking about password managers for years. We love them. And Bitwarden is the only open source cross-platform password manager that can be used at home, on the go, or at work, and is trusted by millions of individuals, teams, and organizations worldwide. Get started with a free trial of Teams or Enterprise Plan, or get started for free across all devices as an individual user at bitwarden.com/twit. That's bitwarden.com/twit. Thanks, Bitwarden. Cool. And so with that, let's dive into some hardware. All right, so Huyen, before you do this first story, I feel like on a recent episode we mentioned did we summon the ROG phone? I think we did, right?
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Okay.
That was really, when I saw this story, I was really excited. So yeah,
I knew it. Good.
I'm really excited. Okay, I totally love ROG, Republic of Gaming. When I last updated my PC, everything was ROG, everything was LEDs. And if you are a fan of ASUS Republic of Gamer type gears and you really want a super, super duper gaming phone, well, ASUS just unveiled the ROG Phone 6 series on July 5th. That is today. And phones are going to go on sale globally in the coming weeks, available in over 30 regions, including the US, UK, Canada, France, Germany, India, and more. And over there at Android Central is a very thorough review of this device. And I think to say, like, the reviewer is extremely excited about it. And it's intense. If you look at this, you can tell that this is an ASUS ROG phone, just from the styling and just the way it looks, down to kind of like the way that the customization is. And this is a phone built for gaming. So the regular 6 series, of which there are 2 colors, black and white, although they give them like really cool gamer names that I don't remember off the top of my head. There's going to be a 12 gigabyte of RAM, 256 gigabytes of storage version for $999 EU. That's about $1,042 USD. And another kind of mid-range at 16 gigabytes memory, 512 gigabytes storage. And for the 6 Pro, which is the highest end of the 6 series ROG phone, you're going to get 18 gigabytes of memory and 512 gigabytes of storage for $1299 EU or $1355 USD. It is a gaming phone. There's a 165 hertz AMOLED screen, and the processor is the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. And the reviewer noted that it is super fast. Unsurprisingly, for a gaming phone, there is very loud stereo sound and a 3.5 millimeter audio jack. So you can plug in your headphones and game while you like, as loud as you want. And a really cool feature that was on the Phone 5 series is these really cool triggers. So if you think about a normal gaming controller, most gaming controllers have like little trigger buttons kind of on the shoulders of the controller pad or the controller. Well, on this Phone 6 series, there are actually ultrasonic triggers so that as you're holding your phone kind of in landscape mode, you can actually touch the sides of the phone like triggers based on ultrasonic technology. So extra controls, there's a side-mounted USB-C port, and hear tell, the thermals on this are excellent. ASUS is well known for kind of like their thermal cooling system. So there you go. You have one here in your gaming phone. It's a kind of bit of a taller phone, which kind of makes sense because of the way that you would probably game on it, holding it on its side, so you get a little bit more room. It does have wide bezels, but that's because all of the kind of more phone type stuff like your camera are going to be sitting under the bezels, leaving you plenty of room to see your game. There are a few cons in this. Now, there are going to be fewer software updates than other high-end phones, which we usually don't like on this show. Yes, that's a thing. And also the camera is not quite on par with other flagships, especially kind of in this price range, but it's a gaming phone. So that I'm a little less mad about. The software updates I am a little bit mad about. And if you're familiar with ASUS, and if you use any kind of ASUS gear, you know that any kind of ASUS like hardware that you buy comes with this whole like suite of customization software called Armory Crate. Well, you get Armory Crate on your phone, and you get to do kind of all kinds of customization and tweaking of both things like the triggers as well as kind of like other performance type stuff. And in terms of software, you get Android 12 in your ROG Phone 6, but with two interfaces. The actual Android interface is called Zen UI, and then the actual kind of gaming interface that you use is the ROG UI. I'm not quite sure where the split comes with that, but basically that. So if you want the ultimate gaming phone with a lovely snappy processor, a huge screen, and triggers, you can get the ASUS ROG Phone 6 series. And yeah, I just, okay. I would never buy this myself because I already have a rig, but I love that this exists, and I love that ASUS is really kind of going in. And I mean, I don't know like if either of you are this hardcore of mobile gamers, but I can't imagine that this would not do well in kind of other countries, especially that have a much larger mobile gaming base like South Korea or China. So kind of amazing.
Well,
thoughts,
I feel
questions?
like if you are a member of the Republic of Gaming, you don't need updates, right? I mean, you are just so extreme that you don't need them.
Extreme.
I mean, this is a gamer phone. This is like if you need to complete the set of your ASUS ROG, which we kind of do at my house. My husband has an ASUS ROG monitor. You know, it might be tempting.
No, gaming phones have always had this really interesting niche to me because like other gaming hardware products, we have an expectation that like you're talking about high performance and the compromises are on other parts of the experience, like you know some of the build or some of the other some of the other tech that goes into it, but you cannot sacrifice pure horsepower, pure performance. And like I've been spending a lot of time. I've got the Poco, the F4 GT, which has little pop-up triggers, and I've been spending a lot of time with the Red Magic 7 Pro, which has the built-in cooling fan. And so I think one of the most critical things here is seeing ASUS getting to play with the Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1. So we should see a little refinement in terms of just that horsepower. But when you see what a gaming phone can do, the Red Magic 7 Pro is genuinely capable of game performance that a Nintendo Switch or my Steam Deck is genuinely not capable of performing. You know, like I love arcadey shooters. Well, my Steam Deck tops out at 60 hertz. It's got a 60 frames per second display. There's no point trying to drive a game over 60 hertz. And that same game will play on my Red Magic at 120 hertz. So you're playing a really fun shooter arcadey kind of game, and you're like, this is incredible. This is something a Nintendo Switch can't do if you're playing a platformer like Dead Cells. You know, well, this is something a gaming phone can do. And especially if ASUS is going to keep up with their accessories. Because it's often not just the phone itself, it's all of the other things that kind of go into docks and cradles, plugging a phone into a larger display or a TV, having some alternative method of cooling. Some of the new like electrothermal coolers, the Peltier coolers, can genuinely drop, I mean, like 20, 30 degrees off the back of your phone. And that kind of stuff is really exciting if you really do care about trying to drive a nicer gaming experience. I think we kind of get stuck in talking about Android gaming, like, you know, Gem Swap or Candy Crush or little solitaire types of games. And we forget, like, there is a robust second life for games on mobile. You know, after the game has kind of gone through consoles and PC, there are more and more titles that are showing up on mobile that can really drive this stuff. My last playthrough on Alien Isolation was on a phone. You know, that's silly, but it worked really well. So, you know, seeing like we've got Poco, we've got Black Shark, we've got Red Magic, and now we've got ROG jumping back in too. It's funny that for such a tight little niche, we actually do have a good spectrum of competition at different price points. ROG will likely be regarded the crown jewel, but active cooling, a fan inside your phone is crazy performance. And then you can go even cheaper if you want to go with like a a Poco or a Black Shark in the same conversation. I think it's really exciting. There's this little core group of people that don't want an additional purchase. They've got a phone, they can handle all their communication stuff, and then their phone can also game a little bit better than a normal phone, and they're good with that. And to see that community of people have some solid options is always going to be really exciting.
That is really fair. That's a fair point, too, that you can have both your kind of mostly flagship phone and a very decent gaming rig. I also forgot to mention that the battery life on this is, the reviewer noted they had over a day of battery life. And can you imagine that, like a gaming phone having more than a day of battery life?
No.
He said somewhere between like a day and two.
No,
like
untrue.
Absolutely ridiculous. You don't think so?
Don't think it's true? Don't believe it. Because that's someone who wasn't gaming on it.
You don't think so? It didn't melt in your hands, I bet. So there you. I mean, that's
good. I mean, again, we're talking about if anyone knows how to move heat around the internals of a computing device, it's ASUS. I've had many fond experiences with ASUS over the years doing PC builds. But again, it's like we're talking about a gaming phone. 2-day battery life for doing phone stuff, sure, but I mean, you're not playing Genshin Impact for 2 days on a charge with any regularity. I mean, again, we get stuck in this thing. We're going to talk about the phone and average consumers and the basic things that phones do. A gaming phone is a different entity.
Yep.
I'm fine making a slight compromise to camera performance. I might even be fine making a compromise to the screen resolution, but I want a giant battery and I want high performance internals because I know I'm going to be gaming for 2 to 3 hours, but then I also need fast charging and I need better power management, like charge separation. Like ASUS, Red Magic, and Sony are the only companies that are giving us this really awesome feature when you use your phone hard, you plug it in, and it doesn't charge the battery. It only goes to driving the internals of the phone, so you put fewer charge cycles. You put less wear and tear on your battery. So again, it's that kind of stuff that really needs the highlight of the conversation because that's what makes a gaming phone different than a more mainstream device. And I kind of feel it's disingenuous to say, you got 2 days of battery life. You're like, not playing Tesla versus Lovecraft. I'm going to kill that battery. It's just going to take me a little longer than if I kill that battery like on a Samsung.
and the use case distinction I think is really interesting there because and I will say it because for years we have treated gaming phones like this wacky offshoot and like who are these for and whatever, but you're right, but seeing the emergence of Steam Deck, Switch, like mobile gaming is a thing, and it almost becomes like a paradigm shift where it's a gaming device with all the stuff of a phone other than it's a phone that can play these games. You know what I mean? Like it's a way of looking at it. And honestly, it's been years. I mean, we're on ROG Phone 6, which is which shows that people are buying them. There's an audience for them. There's a market for them. And to your point, it's a different use case. So
I mean, and we're pretty U.S. centric on this show, just because we're all U.S. people. But I mean, there's like the Asian market for gaming, especially mobile gaming, is huge. I think like the South Korean mobile gaming like market is, I think even in like 2020, can't find like recent stats for like 1.3 billion dollars in mobile gaming.
Easy. Totally believe it.
So, I mean, and even if it seems like a niche thing here, it might not be so niche in other parts of the world where, people are like maybe even like primarily like mobile gaming, or where you still have like, PC bongs where people like socially gather and like either do PC or like mobile gaming. So yeah, for sure. Like I love this phone. I personally wouldn't buy one just because I already have like my stupid rig, but I love that this exists and I love that it is an ASUS. So am I gifting versus jiffing it when I say ASUS versus ASUS? Is that a thing? Am I? Because I've always said ASUS.
No.
Is it ASUS?
I don't. So
I think it's ASUS.
Is it
the
ASUS?
jiffing
My bad,
thing.
ASUS.
If I'm going to call you out, because I had an ASUS product rep sit me down. This is years ago, and he was very particular. We don't call it a ROG. We call it a ROG.
Oh, my bad.
It is a Republic of
I've heard
Gamers. It is not its own acronym. And then after that, I don't know if that's still a thing or not. But to your point about like the excitement and sort of the global community and getting out of just sort of the U.S. centric bubble on what we value in gaming, this is one of those opportunities that I hope more traditional Western gamers would start looking at the international mobile gaming market with a little bit, just with like a little bit more of an olive branch. The types of gaming experiences as a Western consumer that I hope to enjoy are not the sort of microtransaction and gotcha mechanic riddled games, but we need more gamers to come over and support the developers that are making those better gaming experiences, the less predatory gaming experiences, and we've got the hardware in our phones to back that up now. And I think this is a great opportunity. We know mobile gaming revenue is higher than console and PC gaming revenue combined. Now, this is a huge opportunity for us to say, these are the types of gaming experiences that I enjoy, that I hope to pass on to my kids, that I hope they will be able to experience. If we're not a part of the mobile gaming conversation, then those more predatory mechanics that we say we don't like are going to take root. So if you're a traditional gamer and you're frowning at phones and you're not even bothering to look at all of the amazing games that you actually can play on your phone, then not only are you missing out, but you're also not a part of a conversation that will drive better gaming experiences for other people. This is just how I feel about it. So.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely preach.
All right. Well said, Juan. More content than I thought we could have gotten out of the ROG phone. But to move on to another abbreviation that makes us laugh, HTC announced the tablet. I don't know if anybody caught this. It was actually, they released the tablet. It was actually announced last month and literally nobody noticed, probably because it's aimed at emerging markets, specifically African markets. And this tablet is similar to the A100 tablet they released last year, which came out in Russia. This is the new A101. From HTC. It's got a 10.1 inch display running Android 11, and it's got a bunch of specs: 8 gig of RAM, 28 gig of storage. Cameras, 2 cameras in the back, 16 megapixel and 2 megapixel wide. It's got a headphone jack, 7,000 milliamp battery, and yeah, HTC pumping out a emerging markets tablet. Who knew?
Cool story.
Cool story, bro.
I just feel like those letters pop up, and I feel like I should be interested. I'm such a love for classic HTC. I was actually cleaning out my bookshelf, and you're like, oh, but I can't get rid of all of these old phones that were made out of metal. I must keep them all. And I just, I think the strategy for this label now is very interesting. It's kind of becoming another Nokia, right? Like I don't sit there and pine over every new Nokia phone that gets launched, because there's this sort of glut of lower to middle range phones with varying sort of cookie cutter specs. And I see HTC as, that's probably a better game for more immediate profitability. I hope this allows them to kick off and grow, and maybe we'll see some other products that can start hitting other regions and other markets. But it's just, at the one time, it's like, I'm glad they're still around, but this isn't the HTC that I fell in love with. And it just makes me a little sad and happy at the same time. It's a very complicated emotion for a brand of 3 letters on the back of a gadget.
Yep. And I'm right there with you. I can't ignore it when I see those 3 letters in a headline.
Exactly.
I just can't. I always click on it. So yeah.
I have to.
All right. So that's it. Let's move along. Huyen, why don't you tell us about the new Xiaomi stuff?
Yeah, so in phones that we will never get to see, but that I'm totally excited about for ridiculous reasons. Just yesterday on July 4th, Xiaomi announced a new top-end series of phones, the 12S series. That's the 12S, 12S Pro, and the 12S Ultra. Now, the 12S Ultra has something that is amazing. I mean, you can see it there in that photo. It's got a big, huge 1-inch Sony IMX989 camera sensor, which I believe I drilled over already when we talked about the Sharp Aquos R6, which I won't be able to get either. But this is look at this thing. Look at it. It's like half camera. It's like a third camera. It's amazing.
It's enormous.
It's enormous. It's a Leica camera. So for all of you, super hyper enthusiast photographers out there that love Leica, there's a Leica right there on your Xiaomi, because Leica is in fact the longtime camera partner of Xiaomi. And so yeah, the 12S Ultra has a 50 megapixel primary camera, which is super fast at f1.9. And it also has a 48 megapixel ultra wide and a 48 megapixel telephoto. And it also includes pixel binning, which allows for massive zoom. And I mean, just look at it. It's look how ridiculous this camera bump is. You'll also find the zippy Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 on it, and then specs from anywhere from 8 gigabytes of RAM with 256 storage for the 12S, all the way up to let me see. Oh my gosh, why did I write my notes like that? I think it's like. And up to 512 gigabyte storage for the 12S Ultra, because you'll need it with all those megapixels. You need all that storage. And it also comes with a 120 hertz AMOLED display that is able to show HDR10 plus, 4500 milliamp battery on the 12S side, to 4600 for the 12S Pro, all the way up to a 4860 milliamp battery on the 12S Ultra, and various speeds of fast charging and wireless charging as well. So if you're able to get your hands on the Xiaomi and you're a huge camera fan and Leica fan, well, here's a huge camera for you on this phone, which you're not going to be able to get. And I'm really sad about it, because I actually would get this phone because I'm a ridiculous person.
And it became available as of yesterday, right? I think they launched on July 4th.
Was it launched July 4th? Well, then there you go. If you can get your hands on a Xiaomi 12S Ultra, let me know how it goes, because I'm jealous. I'm just drooling on this all over the sensor. Just really gross, but it's awesome. Look at it.
What do you think, Juan? Does this enormous lens do anything for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, again, I think it's another one of those things in the way we talk about gadgets where we've sort of missed a number of really exciting camera upgrades, and we're in a sensor arms race right now, which if you're into any type of mobile content, if you're into vlogging, just capturing better family memories, photography, this stuff is actually getting really exciting. And we've got a bunch of techies that just well, I pushed the button and I got HDR colors. And you're like, you're missing everything that is making this stuff really cool. I've had such difficult times. Like, I've been trying to get my hands on a Sharp because they've been putting out 1-inch sensor camera phones for a while. And right now, like, for example, if you pick up something like a Pixel 6 Pro, Vivo X80 Pro, a Galaxy Ultra, or I'm missing one of them. There's another phone out there, or I mean, like the Sony Pro I. Once you start getting into a 1/1.3 inch sensor, you're already at a tier where you're starting to compete with 16 millimeter film for the sensor size. And so these phones are now directly comparing with their crop factors against, the kinds of cameras and lenses that you would shoot on, Micro Four Thirds or APS-C. My Micro Four Thirds camera on a sort of a 24 millimeter equivalent lens shoots about an f5.6 image compared to a full frame camera wide open. So at f2.8, it's a crop factor of 2. A 1/1.3 inch camera phone is directly competitive optically. That's before you get into portrait modes and all this other fancy stuff. It's like I've got a full frame camera shooting at f5.6. So all of the camera nerd specs and math and whatnot, that's what we already have now. That's like pretty close to what you get on a Pixel 6 Pro. Once we hit that 1-inch camera sensor boundary, we're doing something very impressive with optics and with performance. And it changes everything. It changes your depth of field. It changes your approach to highlighting and isolating your subject. It improves your low light capabilities. Optically, you start playing with RAW files that are pixel binned down. They compete directly against smaller mirrorless sensor cameras. I mean, this is like a revolution that's happening, and it's getting so little attention from like the mainstream tech. But then you go and you listen to people that are more like camera focused, and they're playing with these phones and going like, hey, I'm doing incredible things with these phones these days. Like, the photographers are actually getting really excited about this stuff. And the techies are just kind of sitting on their hands like, I don't know. I took a selfie and it was kind of the same. And I need people to understand it's getting
It's funny that you say that. It's funny that you say that, because I have a friend of mine who is a photographer, And I won't say which phone he's using because it's not necessarily covered on this show, but he has been like, he does a lot of concert photography and stuff like that. And he's got, the latest little point and shoot and like all these great little cameras and all this sort of stuff. And then he'll also use his iPhone and you can't tell the difference. Like the cameras on the phones in general, are getting to the point where professional photographers can utilize the phones. Now that said, I'm like all thumbs on my camera app, and like I don't know how to get depth of field and all the settings. So I assume they know what they're doing, but it is a trip.
Ron, that's why I'm excited though, is because when you change the sensor size, this was like a major improvement on the Pixel 6 Pro, and I think a lot of people just went, I don't know, it's Google HDR and it's kind of the same. But for you, exactly what you're saying, you line up a shot and you take it between like a Pixel 5 and a Pixel 6. You don't have to do anything to enjoy the improvements, the photographic and optical improvements to moving up to that larger image sensor. I'm actually excited because it democratizes something that used to be a challenge. A 1-inch sensor used to be the sensor you would use in like a $1,500 sort of small form factor point and shoot super zoom kind of camera, like a Sony RX series. You would spend $1,500 just on that to get that 1-inch sensor. Now, exactly for what you're saying, for what you should care about, optically, your photos are going to look more like photographs and less like disposable point and shoot social media images. And you don't have to do anything. You push the shutter button and you will immediately benefit from those types of optical improvements.
Yeah, totally. Totally, indeed. All right, we're gonna move on because we're tight on time. Real quickly, we need a show bumper, I think, for Nothing News. But here we are. Thanks to an Amazon link in Europe, we now know the pricing of what the Nothing phone will be. Reminder, this is going to be announced on July 12th in an event in London, which is next week, which is next Tuesday, in fact. So tune in next week. We'll probably be talking all about it. But thanks to this Amazon link, we found out that the 8 gig of RAM, 256 gig of storage model will cost €469.99. Then the high end of the phone will be 12 gig of RAM with 256 gig of storage for €549. So that's a range of about $480 to about $563, which is somewhat pointless because it's not going to be sold in the US. It's just going to be sold in Europe. So who cares how much it is in US dollars? But it's much more aligned to a mid-range than a flagship, which is very much a page from the OnePlus playbook for sure. Juan, have you seen the Nothing phone? Have you been tracking this story? Have you been tracking this phone?
Yeah, I've been following it, and it makes me, this pricing makes me very anxious for the Nothing experiment. I mean, I've been playing with so many Pocos and Realmes and Vivo iQOOs, and there are so many amazing performing devices at around $400, for around €400, that this really has its work cut out for it. I don't know that you can make the emotion game happen like OnePlus did way back in the day. Because OnePlus wasn't facing this kind of competition from all of these sort of flagship killer sub-brands. Right now, you can get an iQOO Neo 6, 12 gigs of RAM, 256 gigs of storage with a Snapdragon 870 and a great main camera sensor for around $450 US, which puts it square in the sights of less RAM and an entire tier lower SoC than what Nothing is going to be putting into this phone. So you really got to work the emotion angle, but there are brands that have already been doing it in this space for the last several years. This pricing would make me very nervous about the first generation of Nothing products.
It should be interesting. What do you think of the LED lights thing, the back panel stuff that was revealed? What do you,
Oh dear.
I don't think it makes up a €20 difference when I know I can get a much more powerful device. And in some regions of the EU, I'm still expecting a Pixel 6a to show up at around what, like $399, 300, like for around €400. And there, you've got to fight Tensor. Google photography and algorithms are phenomenal for auto point and shoot in the mid-range, and you're going to be getting the benefit of like longer software support. probably at around 50 euros cheaper. Again, depending on regions and pricing and availability and all that mess, it's really hard to predict. But when you look at internationally, especially outside the US where you do have choices, it's not just whatever your carrier has in stock on the shelf. This is exactly where nothing is actually in the most danger. This is the hottest sector of competition for Android. Android phones above 400 are not selling very well. Android's main growth, we've never sold more phones than we ever have in the history of the smartphone market. The majority of those are at around 500 and less. So this is like the hottest spot of competition.
Yep.
And I don't think nothing is bringing the best specs package.
Anything?
To this conversation.
Nothing's bringing anything to
They're bringing
to the
something. They're not.
There's so many jokes using the nothing something thing, but I called it a few years ago. I said the mid range was where it was at. You know, I mean that like when we saw when Google embraced it with the 4A and then the 5A, and now we're waiting on the 6A. Like mid range is where it's at. So yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
Cool. All right. So we're going to take a break and we're going to thank our next sponsor. And this episode of All About Android is brought to you by Wealthfront. And listen, stock trading can be a wild ride. I've tried it, trust me. But the thrill of risking it all is best enjoyed in moderation, like casino gambling and eating questionable street food. If you're playing the market, I hope for your sake that you're stashing some safer money in a place like Wealthfront. You might think that day trading stocks is the secret to investing success, but Wealthfront has a ton of data to show that time in the market almost always beats timing the market. Their globally diversified portfolios automatically optimize to hit the goals you set and the risk level you choose, and also to get you automatic tax breaks that can boost your returns, even when the market dips. Yeah, it's called tax loss harvesting, and they actually invented the software. Look it up. You can also personalize your portfolio with a selection of funds handpicked by Wealthfront's financial experts. Categories include social responsibility, clean energy, and cryptocurrency. And Wealthfront is trusted with more than $27 billion in assets, helping nearly 500,000 people build their wealth, and Investopedia named them Best Robo-Advisor for 2022. To start building your wealth and get your first $5,000 managed for free for life, go to wealthfront.com/twit. That's WEALTHFRONT.com/twit to start building your wealth. Go to wealthfront.com/twit and get started today. And thank you, Wealthfront, for helping us out with that and sponsoring this episode of All About Android. Thanks, Wealthfront. All right, with that said, let's get into some apps.
I always like to say bon apps, and then my sister thinks I'm talking about appetizers, like trying to make a pun, like bon appetit. And I was like, oh yeah, like good apps, but she's like, oh, why are we talking about food? Like, anyway. So you might have heard of Twitter Blue, which is a monthly subscription that offers exclusive access to premium features that allow you to customize your Twitter experience. Your mileage might vary on how you feel about that. I think my mileage or my thoughts on it are apparent from my show notes, where I accidentally typed Twitter Bitter rather than Twitter Blue, so you can kind of see how I feel about it. All forgiveness from my many Android friends over at Twitter. I'm sorry, but hey, on the positive side, on June 30th, Twitter Blue announced support for a customizable navigation bar. So if you're an iOS user on Twitter Blue, you already had that in November 2021. But now for Android users, if you go to Twitter Blue, you will find a setting for custom navigations, and you will be able to kind of change around, delete and add, explore search, communities, notifications, messages, and spaces buttons. And you will be able to see your customized navigation bar at the bottom of the app. So there you go. Twitter Blue users, a little something for you in July 2022.
I will say this jumped my eye because, like, we always wonder how Twitter is going to monetize users, and the Twitter Blue subscription is something that a lot of my friends have made fun of. But, like, being able to customize your navigation bar in their app and actually like remove something you don't like, if you don't like spaces like that's pretty powerful. I think, I don't know. I thought it was neat. I thought it was an interesting direction. So.
No, for sure. Like,
agree.
How much is Twitter Blue?
Go ahead. I was just going to jump in and say,
No, I agree. I mean, like monetization is hard. I know we've talked about it on the show, and I don't mean to like necessarily make fun of anyone's like subscription plans for monetizing a thing, especially Twitter, which, we always kind of ask, like, what are they going to do? It's Twitter, right? They're just so important. They're just kind of part of our culture. But how are they going to monetize? And I mean, that's really fair. I do feel, I think customization and navigation is a hard enough feature and premium enough that it would make sense to have it in Twitter Blue. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm not hating on it too much.
I haven't found their hook yet for what gets me to spend money with Twitter, but I like this direction that they're trying to find some other type of user interaction or value add rather than just the same traditional advertising and user data modeling. I'm sure they're definitely doing all of that too. But it wouldn't take much more, just a few other things I feel like trending in this direction, and I'd probably get pushed over the edge to supporting the platform with a Blue subscription myself.
So to answer the question, it costs $2.99 a month, so less than a cup of coffee, right? Less than a cup of water from Starbucks, right? And with it, you get the ability to update, to edit the app in this way that we just shared, as well as you get the undo button. And you get ad-free news articles. So it's like functionality plus content. Like, I mean, if I don't know, I'm not as a hardcore Twitter user as I was in the past, and I certainly don't use the Twitter app. I use Talon still, but it's pretty.
It's getting better.
If you're a Twitter fan, and like they also offer pinned conversations, like really interesting that it's the cross section of like functionality with the platform as well as ad-free content. I think that's a good combination that too many companies are focused. Either you pay the subscription to get the ad-free content, or you pay the subscription to get the functionality. Who's doing both? And I think that's somewhat innovative. So. Yeah.
I totally forgot the undo tweet feature was in Twitter Blue, and I might just have to get it. So, again, as I said, a lot of my friends work at Twitter. It is totally side related, but not really related. Twitter has hired so many Android devs like in the last year. It's insane. A lot of times in the Android dev community, when someone has left somewhere, they either end up at Twitter or Dropbox. That's a gross overgeneralization, but it has happened. It has happened. So you know what? For y'all, I will subscribe to Twitter Blue. You brought me over. You changed my mind.
With all those Android devs, scrolling in Twitter is still kind of garbage on most of my Android phones. You'd think they'd polish that up.
Wait, did we just actually push you over the edge, Huyen? Are you gonna go subscribe to it after the show?
Do it.
For undo tweets. Do you know how many times I've typoed something on a tweet and resent it 3 or 4 times? Yeah, I'm gonna get it. Yeah. Also, for my buds, for my Android buds. I mean,
all right. I mean, I don't know what the difference between undo tweet and actually deleting the tweet is, but 6 of one, half a dozen the other. You tell me after you get it. So we'll see.
I don't know. We've been asking.
I just want the edit button. We all want the edit button. Let us edit the tweet. Please. Anyway. All right. Well, so our last app story, which I thought was interesting, it combines 2 of our favorite topics on this show, YouTube Music and tablets. Right? There's 2 great tastes that go great together. But in a case of Google walking its own walk, as we saw with Android 12L and the focus at larger devices and tablet-friendly approaches, the YouTube Music app has been updated to allow for a better UI design on tablets when browsing artists. This kind of update happened already to the playlist section of the app recently, and now they're following it up when you are looking through artists, and it is a very nice widescreen tablet-oriented view. So here it is, Google kind of doing their own thing. So that's kind of cool. And Huyen, there you go, our conversation about tablet design. What do you think of this as a developer? Do you think this works?
I mean, it's about time. Okay, so I mean, I think it looks good. And actually now that I've been using the Galaxy Z Fold 3 for a couple weeks now, so I guess I'm officially sort of not a tablet, but a large screen daily driver. About time. And that's the thing though, and I brought this up before, is that at least in places I've worked, a lot of times, there's always this tension of how should we design, iOS versus Android and yada yada. So you always kind of look to Google. I mean, at least in places I've been, Google has been always a good place to kind of, rather than devs telling designers and telling stakeholders and project and PMs and EMs what we're supposed to do or what's Androidy, you just show them a Google app because you assume they're like a reference, right? They're going to be the resource of like how to do things. And with all this like pushing for large screens, yes, finally, please make all your experiences, especially YouTube Music, which is a whole other rant aside, make him look good on large screens. So yes, I mean like, but sincerely, I often, very often in discussions say, okay, well, here's a similar experience on a Google app. How can we take that and apply it to our situation? How can we take that and like spin it on our own for like our particular brand? So I'm always happy about seeing stuff like this, especially for something like YouTube Music, which should be more of a music listening experience reference. Other rant aside for another day, but you know, I'm always glad to see that, especially for large screens, because I mean, I don't know, is this kind of putting their money where their mouth is in terms of large screens? Is that the right phrase? Different phrase? I don't know.
Yeah, put money where their mouth is. I think that works. Yeah,
again, this whole podcast just being, you know, watch us struggle to come up with the appropriate metaphor for
Android metaphors.
Android metaphors. Yep.
Struggling Android metaphors. That's what we'll say. That.
Yeah. But to the same points, it's exactly the next steps that Google needs to show, not tell. We're totally interested in more tablet stuff. Okay. Then make this stuff work on larger screens, because I still feel like we're struggling across the consumer electronics landscape, even on that other side of the fence with that other manufacturer who makes very popular tablets. I think we've still struggled to demonstrate what a larger screened but still mobile, kind of a mobile OS, mobile chipset, mobile product can really demonstrate, and we keep playing with old metaphors. It's either more like a phone or it's more like a laptop, and I just feel like Google's been in such a holding pattern on Android for tablets while they've been pushing Chrome as their larger screened initiative. This feels like catch up, but it feels like the appropriate place to really start driving those new experiences.
Yep. Agreed. Well, so in terms of updating YouTube Music, it's not so much tablet oriented, but I thought this is interesting. I did receive an email today from YouTube Music because I am a loyal YouTube Music user, whether I like it or not. And I didn't see anyone covering this in the press at all. There it is. Nice. But I didn't see anyone covering this in the press at all, but they sent me an email, which for our video viewers, Burke, if you want to pull up I took a screenshot of the email. But basically the email just says, "Hi, music fans. When you want to follow an artist on YouTube, sometimes you find they have multiple channels. So what should you subscribe to?" Which is totally true, which is the fact that, and they have a animated GIF in the email that shows like artist music videos, official artist channel, artist albums, and then the animated GIF in the email collapses into one channel, and it adds all the subscribers into one number, which I thought was interesting. But basically what they're doing is they're collapsing all of the various places where you can subscribe to an artist into just one official artist channel, which is immensely helpful, because the number of times that I've searched for an artist and then found, you know, another piece of, like multiple channels and multiple things to subscribe to, it's very confusing. So this gives me a little bit of hope that the YouTube Music team is doing their best to try to get YouTube Music to where it needs to be. And it's a process, and we should just ride it with them. So, I don't know. I've dug my heels in, and I'm staying on YouTube Music. I'm not going to Spotify. I don't know why. But
I mean, I didn't go with Spotify either. But it's you're trying to mix platforms. Like YouTube's strength is not necessarily a music listening or a music platform strength. So it's interesting watching them try to guide the functionality of their video distribution service into a direction that someone who's more of a music fan, a music consumer, is going to appreciate those types of add-ons. Yep. I mean, just in terms of UI, I mean, it's interesting seeing like we need to make this a good thing for a phone and a good thing for a tablet, and there's also a desktop correlation to this as well, or a laptop or whatever device that you're going to use with it. Then there's a search and discoverability issue. Then there's a subscription issue. Then, I mean, like you've got it's such a multi-pronged beast that other music streaming platforms don't have to contend with at all. Like the immediacy of the service that I use is I pick it up and I think, oh, I want to listen to this song, and I play the song, and then that's it. That's my interaction. I'm not looking for anything else. I'm not looking for interviews of that artist. I'm not looking for the music videos to watch while I'm driving in my car. I mean, I wanted the song, I'm listening to the song, and I'm satisfied. And I still feel like that's one of the things that's gonna, I mean, from the golden days of Google Play Music, which was a more straightforward music consuming service, I still feel like they have a lot of those usability issues to sort out.
Yep. And they all do, right? I mean, Huyen, what do you use for your music?
Many things. So I'm still holding on to YouTube Music. I do think it's interesting because, like, for example, there's some like remixes and other kind of like live shows that I actually like listening to that I can't find like hosted on the actual like music service that I kind of like YouTube Music for adding on. So that's kind of a thing. I also sometimes use Spotify, but that's more just like entropy and like not quite moving things over. And I'm trying to use Tidal because my husband has a Tidal account, and I know I actually think my experience with Tidal was worse than YouTube Music.
Wow. I'm not surprised. I can't believe Tidal's still around, to be honest. I kind of still, I do like the mission of trying to serve artists better. And I think nominally that's like what is really attractive about it. But goodness gracious, the app was atrocious. I tried to like set it up while I was on a road trip, and I was very, 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 very unhappy. I just put on YouTube Music right away and called it. So I think primarily YouTube Music still, but more like because other reasons, not because of YouTube Music's innate kind of like goodness or badness. Because other things aren't as good, right? Yeah.
For that same reason, I went over to Qobuz because I still think, at least from the last time I saw a breakdown on royalties, I still think Qobuz is one of the highest paying for artists. So I want to say it's something crazy, like the number of plays that you need to have on different streaming services. It's like if you listen to a song 10 times on Qobuz, the artist has already made $1 kind of a thing.
Good.
So cool. But then also in the same mission as Tidal, it's really been the most straightforward way to get CD quality or better. Like the entire platform is like, the lowest quality stream you can get on Qobuz is higher quality than the highest quality stream you can get on Spotify. And then from there, you can climb up. If you want 2496 and you want crazy off-the-chain FLAC files, you can go that high if you want. You can kind of take it as high as the artist has submitted the music to the service. So I've really liked it. The app is really is still kind of clumsy. Like to your point, it's definitely got a bit of a learning curve, and there are some squishy bits that I hope the developers will sort out. But their relationship with artists seems to be a better paying relationship than many of their competitors.
All right, well, there we go. At the end of the night, I'm probably going to have a fourth music service on.
I love it. All right, so you got a Twitter Blue subscription, and you've got a fourth music service. Excellent.
I love it. We're selling around everything this week. This is awesome.
This is great.
I should be getting a commission from all these services.
When I can tell you, Juan and I have a new subscription service, by the way. We can tell you about it after the show, but we're all ready for you to sign up for it. So
okay.
All right. Before we get to your feedback, we're going to thank our last sponsor of the evening, because this episode of All About Android is brought to you by Collide. And the challenge with device security has always been that it's difficult to scale. The bigger you are, the more edge cases you introduce, and the easier it is for significant issues to escape your notice. And when remote work took over, that challenge got exponentially harder. So whether you're a fast-growing startup that needs to graduate from managing device inventory in Google Sheets, or an enterprise trying to speed up service desk issues, you need visibility into your fleet of devices in order to meet security goals and keep everything running smoothly. But how do you achieve that visibility when your design team uses Macs, accounting is on Windows, and your most talented developers are on Linux? Well, you get Collide. Collide is an endpoint security solution that gives IT teams a single dashboard for all devices, regardless of their operating system. Collide can answer questions MDMs can't. Questions like, do you have production data being stored on devices? Are all your developers' SSH keys encrypted? And a host of other data points that you'd have to write a custom shell script in order to learn about. So think about it. If a Linux vulnerability is exposed tomorrow, how will you figure out how many machines are at risk? File a ticket with the team that manages your MDM and wait days to get a report back? Send a mass email and hope that the Linux users open it? With Collide, you have real-time access to your fleet's data, and instead of installing intrusive agents or locking down devices, Collide takes a user-focused approach that communicates security recommendations to your employees directly on Slack. You can answer every question you have about your fleet without intruding on your workforce. Just visit collide.com/AAA to find out how. If you follow that link, they'll hook you up with a goodie bag, including a t-shirt, just for activating a free trial. That's KOLIDE.com/AAA. Collide.com/AAA. And we thank Collide for sponsoring this episode of All About Android and helping IT folks stay in touch with their users. And I love the user-focused approach of Collide. That's fantastic. Thanks so much. And with that, it is time for our favorite portion of the show, hearing from you. You can email us at AAA@twit.tv. And Huyen, you've got our first email. Why don't you go for it?
Yeah, and it's a spicy one. It's a spicy one for Flo. Flo ordered her feedback with some habanero and ghost pepper this week because Mike in Dubai has got something to say about Face ID. I was shocked and appalled by Flo's Face ID love. I have an iPhone with Face ID for work, and it works maybe 80% of the time. Between still having mask guidelines and a glasses wear, it probably has a success rate lower than my Pixel 5 fingerprint scanner. I'm not sure who wins with in-screen versus Face ID versus power button fingerprint scanner, but I'm never going to believe any are better than the Pixel rear fingerprint scanner. Despite being so wrong, it was great seeing Flo on this week's episode. Keep up the great work. And that was from Mike.
All right, so what do we think?
Bravo, Mike. couldn't agree more. Face ID, face unlock is the worst. Objectively, I think we can prove it with science. I'm pretty sure I read it in a book somewhere. Dedicated fingerprint sensors for the win for practicality. I think it's always better if you pick up your phone with purpose and you want it ready to be usable while you're looking at the screen as opposed to face unlock. I hate face unlock with the fiery burning passion of 1,000 suns.
People want it to work, and I just have no interest. And like the thing is like you don't have to use it. Like that's the thing. Like you don't. I don't know. You don't have to. I don't know. Flo did say that Face ID worked on the iPhone better than it on Android, which I do believe. Whether or not it said Flo loved it or not, I was there. I don't know if she loved it.
I would like to bring up a point.
Okay, bro.
The thing is, usually is when they have Face ID, they take something off, like a fingerprint reader. That's the problem.
Right.
It's an either or situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And if we're talking about a true secure, like very few phones have ever had both. Like the LG G8, I think, is one of the few, and maybe a few Huawei, where they had an actual Z camera in the front to do a more secure face scan, not just an optical photo scan. So we really haven't had many choices that deliver on both of those. And I think that's the shame, because it would be nice to have the option on any phone. But, really, for me, it's a practicality issue. I don't like the extra interaction of pulling the phone up to a visibility point and then the phone is responding. Like, especially on like a Xiaomi, my phone is unlocked and ready before it's even fully out of my pocket. And that's what I want. If I'm handling my phone, I'm doing so with some purpose. I'm not looking at the lock screen anymore because I'm often wearing some kind of other notification delivery system. I am making an interruption in my day to handle my phone. I want to abbreviate that interaction as best I can, and Face ID is not the way.
Yep. Agreed. I agree with you there. So, all right. So our next email comes from Greg, who says, over the years, I've heard a lot of reviewers of the flagships and the mid-tier budget phones, but I don't recall you ever comparing generational differences. But as budgets are tighter now, my current OnePlus 5 is feeling its age. I'm looking for different options. Currently, I'm looking at the OnePlus Nord N20, unlocked and available today in Canada, the OnePlus 8T, and the Samsung Galaxy A53. The current pricing from vendor websites and Amazon has all three devices with $120 of each other. Brand new, not refurbs. The Nord N20 and Galaxy A53 both have release dates of spring 2022, but the OnePlus 8T was released in 2020. So I know lifecycle updates will be my issue in approximately 3 to 4 years. And a little bit of background on Greg. I love me a OnePlus. I've owned a OnePlus 1, 2, 4, and current OnePlus 5. In our house, we also have 4 kids with Samsung Galaxies S7, S8, S9, and S10s. So I'm absolutely okay with Samsung devices. So my question for the esteemed panel, which is us, regardless of vendor, would you prefer a brand new mid-tier versus a flagship that is 1 to 2 years old with close to the same price point? which I think is an amazing question. And something that I have pointed out over the years, which is you can absolutely wait a year or two and get that flagship and it's still good. Agree, disagree, or?
Okay, so I'm gonna jump in because I agree. I totally agree. But I absolutely adore. Greg has done something here in asking this question that I don't think a lot of techies always grok. In my family, we're playing a game of, do you need more compute power? And almost always my family members say, no, I just need it to kind of keep doing the same things that it's always done. Well, if you can stay at the same level of compute power, that means you spend less. And that's exactly what he's done in asking this question. I used to have this premium tier SoC, but I don't need more power than that. I just need a newer phone again. So I think there's an interesting thing. Like, if you need more compute power, you go with the year older flagship. But if you step down to a mid-ranger SoC, you're likely going to get better battery life. And I think so many more people out there don't need more compute power. They don't need the crazy new camera features. They might need just a little camera refresh. They're not playing graphics intense games. So step down to the mid-tier SoC with the big battery, you're going to get better battery life. So that to me is the winning argument, is like, you've got to phrase it by what you need, what you want. But I think there's a great argument for the purpose-built mid-ranger with a lower tier of performance on that chipset, on that SoC. I think you'll get better runtime. And I think that's something that people will likely care about more. And then just saving money is going to be nice as like just kind of the cherry on top of that sales strategy. I absolutely love the way Greg phrased this, because he did it without even really like saying that's what he was doing. He's not looking for more power. He's just looking for a refreshed, a new phone.
And I would also pick a brand new mid-tier versus a flagship that's 1 or 2 older for similar reasons, because it's newness, it's new software, and especially like nowadays, especially if you're talking Pixel mid-tier where they have the tensors, they have very decent cameras. Totally worth the value that you get for your money. Like excellent value for the dollar. So easy mid-tier. I only buy the flagships because I'm dumb.
Or you like the new shiny thing.
Because I'm dumb. Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, and
we just did the same thing.
But so like, especially as a developer, it actually probably would be more appropriate for me to buy a mid-tier, because that's probably what, for the apps that I've worked on, most users are probably getting a mid-tier experience, and that's really what I should be focusing on if I was smart. That's what I mean by dumb. Not that people who buy flagship phones are dumb. Buy whatever the hell you want and enjoy it. But I think for me, especially like if I'm really trying to like kind of get to where my users are when I'm deving something, mid-tier makes a lot more sense for me. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that you're dumb if you have a flagship phone. I'm just saying I'm dumb because I'm just opting for flagship when I think mid-tier is excellent.
I'm going to step in. I don't think you're dumb. I don't think that's a fair word for you to categorize yourself. Because the thing we can't get at what is always the hardest thing whenever someone asks me for purchasing advice on a device. Brain.
Wow.
When they just kind of point blank said, I had this old, expensive, powerful phone. Should I get a new expensive, powerful phone? You're asking someone who genuinely tries to replace laptop grade use with their phones when I'm traveling. I spend $1,000 on a phone because it means I should be able to travel without $2,000 worth of laptop and $3,000 worth of camera gear. That's why I do that. And so if Greg is legitimately trying to do something like, hey, I love taking videos of my kids, and I shoot these little videos and I want to put out good quality, maybe even 4K videos, and I want to just cut it right there from the camera. I don't want to have to move the video clips to another computer. That would be an argument for the premium tier phone a year older. I genuinely, like, almost all my podcasts are finished off from phones because a little ARM SoC with mobile software to crank out an MP3 is faster than my, super powerful Threadripper workstation. That is a purpose that you want to step up to the more expensive or the premium tier older device. But if you're not doing that, then don't give yourself the headache of having the hotter, thirstier phone step down. If you're doing phone things only on your phone, then go mid-range and you'll get way better battery life for the equation. So that's the missing piece. If you ever ask someone like us for purchasing advice, it's not just what phone did you have and what phone are you interested in, it's what are you trying to do? Because if you're trying to do more, there are very good reasons to step up. But if you're just wanting to hang out with what you currently have, save the cash and get the battery.
Yep. I agree. And I'll say this, and then we'll move on to the next one because our last email is a long one. But I've said this on the show before, but years and years and years back in the 90s, my father explained to me about computers that there are 3 price points for computers. There's a $500 computer, there's a $1,000 to $1,200 computer, and there's a $1,500 to $2,000 computer, and basically you get what you pay for, and last year's $2,000 computer you can now get for $1,200, and in a year from now you can get it for $500, right? And that same approach has applied to phones. And the whole thing is that I think as great as I think the mid range is, I think that if you want to go flat, and Juan, I think your point about what you're using the phone for and what you need and all stuff like that, it's great you have the option between a brand new mid range, or you can wait a year or two and get the flagship, and it still works. I think that, and it's still a good option. So great email from Greg. Thank you for that. But now, Huyen, you've got the Gone with the Wind up next. So,
all right, this is an amazing email, and unsurprisingly, it is our email. I messed it up. Email of the week. I'm so sorry. I wasn't sure what to go after before. Yes, but this is our email of the week. Okay, I'm just making it hard on Burke tonight. So this is from, and I'm really sorry.
It's okay. I was trying to get a shot of Ron laughing.
Not worth it.
It wasn't worth it at all.
Was it worth it, Burke?
No,
okay.
Let's start over.
No, we can't. We're just gonna leave you hanging like you left me hanging. I'm just kidding. Oh, that's so mean. I'm sorry. My goodness. All right. So this is from Diami Plotka. I hope I'm saying that anywhere near close to correct. If not, I'm so sorry. But Diami has a very lengthy but awesome report for us on the S Pen. So before I get into criticizing you for not appreciating the value of the S Pen, I first want to say thanks. As a listener from episode 0, I really do appreciate all you do for Android. Thank you so much. Every time discussion of a Galaxy Note or other Galaxy device that uses an S Pen comes up, it's constantly met with, I don't know why people need this, or why would anyone use it? Well, my case is certainly business focused, but I will tell you that I have a Galaxy Note 20 and Galaxy Tab S3 that both use S Pens. In my work as a project manager for a commercial roofing company, I use the S Pen daily to take notes and annotate photos. Attached is a typical note I would take when on the field of a roof. The roof plan you see is done by using the note functionality to take a screenshot of Google Earth, importing the photo into Incredible, and then tracing it with the S Pen and deleting the image so I have a clean line drawing. I then mark it up in Incredible, and add my notes. And for video stream users, you'll be able to see some of Diami's sketches and notes right now. It makes a lot of sense. When I need to explain things to my crews in the field, the easiest way is to take an image that I've taken or that they text me and draw directly on it using the S Pen. I recently tried a Galaxy Tab A for work, which did not include S Pen functionality, and it was a complete non-starter. While not specifically S Pen related, the voice recorder application that Samsung includes is far and away the best voice recorder on Android and provides functionality that no other voice recorder does, allowing me to dictate my proposals on my phone and email them to my secretary to be typed up. These are certainly specific use cases, but I bristle every time you explain how non-mainstream you think the S Pen use is. As an Android user with a very different use case, my wife has a Galaxy S22 Ultra and one of the multiple current Galaxy Tabs that uses an S Pen. I'm not sure which one off the top of my head. Well, it's not how I would do it. While it's not how I would do it, she uses the S Pen on her tablet daily for simply playing games. There are many of us out there who appreciate the size and added functionality of the Note and Tab devices that use the S Pen. I appreciate your indulging my rant, and I ask that you please keep up the good work and maybe even say a good thing about the S Pen every once in a while moving forward. Okay, so before I turn it to y'all, I will have to say, Diami, after having been a user of the Galaxy Z Fold 3 for 2 weeks now with the S Pen, I actually was thinking about saying how much I love the S Pen one of these shows because I'm kind of more maybe more on kind of how Diami's wife is using it, where I'm kind of using it to play games. I use it for the crossword puzzle, but I've also done similar, like kind of marking up and drawing and sketching. And also on the Galaxy Z Fold 3, some of the screenshots, because I do a lot of screenshot taking, especially for like deving and stuff, and like saying, oh, hey, like, you know, specifically screenshotting parts of like an app that I'm, you know, working on or debugging or something. It works really well. It works really well. I think the Z Fold 3, because of the crease, is a little bit weird sometimes, but I find the functionality well built, well integrated into the OS, into One UI, and I've been using it constantly. I kind of fall asleep using it, so sometimes I lose it under my pillow these days, but I'm starting to love it. I've now become, what is happening to me? I usually complain about Samsung on the show, but I really do love this S Pen. See, I have it right here. So
wow,
Diami,
I did not predict this, by the way, when I signed you this email. So that's amazing. This
is perfect. I was really excited that you gave me this because I was going to say that, and I do think that the functionality is great. So Samsung and Diami, thank you. S Pen, awesome stuff. All right, now
look at that.
I agree. I have an S Pen too, and I have to throw it in for the rest of you because it is underappreciated, because it is super niche, but for those people that use it, it's great. Yeah, that's it.
Well, and that's the thing, is that like is showing a proper use case and someone who actually gets value out of the functionality. You can't argue that, right? And like I was all ready to say, I hear you, you're right, it's not for me, but I respect you. But here, you know, when hearing your experience with the S Pen, that's a sincere, like, you've seen the light on it. So that's great. I mean, that's two sincere approaches to the use of it. And I don't work in a spot where I'm in the field and I need to mark something up and send it to somebody. I mean, that's a great use, and I can't argue that. I don't know, Juan, how do you feel about the S Pen?
I mean, I guess you got to say you're ready for 3 people saying nice things. So I'm not predisposed to liking Samsung. I think in my entire history of reviewing gadgets, I always think Samsung has been at their strongest when they've made purpose-built devices. My favorites have always been phones like the Actives, which were discontinued, and the Notes, because they're going after a specific demographic and they're fulfilling that demographic's needs. I always think Samsung's been at their weakest when they try to make some sort of milquetoast general all-rounder average consumer device in the premium tier. I think S has always been a disappointment for me over the Note. But on top of that, I've also had wonderful experiences with basically every other stylus-enabled device that I've used. I come from like the Pocket PC days. I like pen touch computing for the specificity of interactions, and I like to doodle and I like to draw. I mean, I'm not much of a cartoonist, but I do enjoy it. So if it's something like a Duo with a pen on it, if it's something like the V60 or the Velvet, which had true active pen digitizers in the screens, I just wrapped up a long-term look at the Motorola Edge Plus, and the stylus folio case on that is near the tier of S Pen good for all of those kinds of remote. You can use it as a shutter button for your camera, just like an S Pen, and it's a fine point digitizer too. I feel like we get so hung up on a mainstream YouTube algorithm, lowest common denominator, average consumer. We forget that all of these other devices have very specific things to offer. We talked about gaming phones. We talked about productivity phones. There are reasons why you might want to shop a different device than just screen and camera. You know, like there are so many other things that we could be doing. I wish we talked about phones more like we talked about laptops, because we entertain slates and portables and convertibles and two-in-ones and rugged laptops and all these other types of laptops. But you get to phones, and then you watch a review on a phone, and you're like, it does phone things. And it's a phone. Yeah, but what kind of phone is it? What was it built to do? I don't know. You know, like Twitter or something, I guess. I don't know. It's a phone. It's got a camera on it. And you're like, this type of frustration, I mean, like I see these types of comments on my videos a lot because there's other things that we could be discussing. So, I mean, like, I always feel like the Note is a crown jewel. The Note, actually, if I remember correctly, there was an article that came out today, or was it yesterday, that, like, the S22 Ultra is going to be one of the best premium selling. It's exceeding Samsung sales estimates. You know, Samsung tried to play that game of separating the S Pen from their most expensive phone and making it a separate accessories purchase. And boy, did that not work for Samsung. And wouldn't you know it, you make a Note again, and you've got a much better performing and much better selling premium tier Samsung device. When they do that right and they don't cut corners, you get a better phone out of it. So I completely appreciate the sentiment, because if I want to pick up a phone for photography and video and content creation, that's one device. If I want to pick up a phone for productivity and communications and spreadsheets and documents, that's a totally different kind of device. And we still haven't found that unicorn that really does truly satisfy all of those different types of things. So until then, you've got to pick your pros and cons, but a stylus is always going to be a premium tier, crown jewel productivity feature.
Well said. Well put. So there it is, Diami. There's some stylist loves, some S Pen specific and non S Pen specific. So if you are an S Pen user, write in, tell us. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at AAA@twit.tv or call in and leave a message at 347-SHOW-AAA, or send a video mail to the email. Do whatever we want to hear from you. It's all great. So thank you, Huyen, for that great lengthy email of the week. Thank you, Burke. All right. Wow. This show was about as long as that email. Juan, you're the best. Thanks for riding along with us. Where can people find you on the internet?
I'm all over the place. Some Gadget Guy on the socials, somegadgetguy.com, patreon.com/somegadgetguy. And then I've also recently been doing a lot of editorial work with reviews.org. And I'm striking out a new series on sort of savvy shopping and consumer tech for slick deals. So I'm kind of unescapable at this point. I'm basically everywhere, and you can't avoid me even if you try.
That's the best way to be, I think, really. So. Cool. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Juan. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
I mean, I love jumping in with you guys, and maybe someday in the future again we'll be able to do a show with Jason. With
Jason, maybe we'll see. He's your white whale.
It could happen, right?
Yep.
Call me Ishmael.
All right. So, Huyen, tell us what's going on in your world.
Yeah, I am currently an unemployed Android developer just for the next 4 weeks. I will be employed in 4 weeks, but normally I do Android developer content. You can find my talk, code, and video of these talks on my website, randomlytyping.com. And for Android and other non-related Android things, you can find me at Queen Code Monkey on Twitter and Instagram.
All right. And a big thanks to Burke behind the ones and twos for doing what you do. And my apology to Victor or Anthony or whoever has to edit this show. We said the wheels go off the bus when Jason leaves, but yeah, so there it is. Sorry, Anthony. And finally, you can find me over on Twitter and on Facebook at RonXO, or if you like pinball, check out Scorbit at scorbit.io, or download the Scorbit app in the Google Play Store. Play more pinball. It's definitely very cool. But that's not all. If you're not a member of Club Twit, what are you thinking of? What are you thinking? Get on that. In fact, Huyen, I think in your subscription purchasing after the show, you should sign up for Club Twit because it is Twit's ad-free subscription tier. You can get all of our shows with no ads, and also an exclusive Twit Plus podcast feed with tons of extra content, and a members-only Discord. And you only pay $7 a month. Or pay a full year for $84 a month. And it's totally worth it if you're a Twit fan. Tune in. Go to twit.tv/clubtwit where you can sign up. And of course, I want to help Jason out. It's time to do the best ofs. If there's moments in the show this year that have happened, let us know. Go to twit.tv/bestof and submit your favorite moments that make the editing job towards the end of the year that much easier. But that's going to wrap it up for this week's show. All About Android comes out every Tuesday evening. You can subscribe at twit.tv/AAA. As mentioned earlier, you can email us at AAA@twit.tv or give us a call at 347-SHOW-AAA. And until next time, when Jason is back, and hopefully I don't have to read as many ads, we'll see you then. So have a good night. So long.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor of Ad Astra magazine, and each week I'm joined by Tarek Malik, the editor-in-chief over at space.com, in our new This Week in Space podcast. Every Friday, Tarek and I take a deep dive into the stories that define the new space age. What's NASA up to? When will Americans once again set foot on the moon? And how about those samples from the Perseverance rover? When are those coming home? What the heck has Elon Musk done now? In addition to all the latest and greatest in space exploration, we'll take an occasional look at bits of spaceflight history that you probably never heard of, and all with an eye towards having a good time along the way. Check us out on your favorite podcatcher.